Welcome, everyone, to our second Spooky Middle Grade Book Club Live. We are very excited to be discussing this book, Twist by Sarah Cannon. And we have Sarah Cannon who has joined us. Yes, everybody must hold up their Bible.
We all know I have a copy, right?
There we go.
I hope you have one, Sarah.
And so we are going to be taking questions from the comments for Sarah. So get those in. Of course, we all have so many burning questions. But let's go ahead and introduce ourselves really quick so we can see who is here. So I'm Kim Ventrella, author of books for middle grade readers and wearer of hats, which look really weird because I have these big headphones underneath, so that's cool. Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet Fox, and I forgot to get my book.
And we lost
Sorry,
her.
it's here. So the most recent spooky book is The Artifact Hunters, and it's the sequel to The Charmed Children of Rookskill Castle.
Awesome. Samantha?
Hello, I am Samantha M. Clark. I'm the author of The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast, and Arrow, that's coming out on June 22nd. Yay!
Woo, woo, woo. Okay, and we're going to be grilling Sarah all night. So we'll just go ahead and get started with our questions, and it will all come out. Maybe you should be. And so, of course, the first thing that I noticed about, well, there's a lot of things about Twist that really stand out, but one of them is that it's kind of this big love letter to growing up in the 80s and 80s nostalgia. So where did that come from? And did you have a lot of fun kind of putting some of those things maybe from your real life, I'm guessing?
I had a total blast. Yeah, the setting is absolutely inspired by the neighborhood I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, Kim, I know we have like the whole Oklahoma thing in common, right? When I was a middle grader. And it just was such a cool, it was like one of those really weird neighborhoods that people call Spielbergian, right? Like it's this kind of weird suburban neighborhood, but then it has like these huge drainage ditches and that are like wild kind of liminal spaces, and it backed up to a farm and all of these kinds of things. So you could actually get into a lot of like trouble in spaces that felt very wild, even though you lived in this place that was very like settled with little baby trees. And Oklahoma is just a place of extremes, right? So like in the summer, we would run up and down the street because we'd hear the fire engine, and it usually meant that somebody's yard was on fire because the grass would get so dry from the heat that it would get crispy. So we would run to see whose yard was on fire. And it just was an odd place. So it was just a perfect setting for something creepy. And then also just like 1984 was kind of the year that everyone I knew started getting cable. And it was also the year that they made it okay to make TV shows that were based on children's toys and kind of like designed to promote children's toys. So, I mean, you know, like everything from X-Men to G.I. Joe to whatever. And it kind of changed how we play. And you could totally tell because my editor's younger than me and is like, oh, yeah, we would go out and we would pretend we were the X-Men. And I was like, no, we pretended some weird stuff because like we just didn't have that narrative idea of like going outside and pretending to be something that we had seen on a TV show in the same way. So, so a lot of that is like why I said it where I did. And I also can't believe all the stuff that they let me get away with. There's so many send-ups of 80 songs in my chapters titles. And I just kept waiting for someone to come back and be like, yeah, you can't do that. And no one did. So that was really fun.
Ooh, so it's full of Easter eggs. I love that. Well, I have a lot of burning questions, of course, but I'm going to turn it over to Janet because I'm sure that you have a burning question you want to ask Sarah.
So I think my burning question, Sarah, is how did you actually have like a visual library of all the critters? Because there's so many and they're so varied and they're so imaginative. And it was, you know, there were a lot of them coming and going and appearing and disappearing, which is one of the, by the way, which is one of the cool things about this book, which is one of the things that I loved, and the kids would actually get a huge kick out of all of these critters that are born of the imagination and have all these, powers and abilities and do things, and they do things to each other, and and I also loved how the parents react, which I know we're going to talk about later. But did you make like a bulletin board with images of these guys, or how did you come to visualize them?
I mean, I would say that like both of my books are pretty critter heavy. And sometimes there'll be like, I make Pinterest boards sometimes where like, something odd that I saw just caught my attention and I put it there so that I'll remember it later. And sometimes I keep lists of like character, critter names and like what I think because sometimes that's the most difficult thing, right? Is you have a visual, but then you're like, what do I call this creature? And like, what would actually make sense? What like feels right? But I don't have one big centralized place. I don't have like a big bestiary of all the different critters that are in my books, although that would be really fun to do.
Yeah.
And they come up at random times because, like a lot of kids, like it's fun to have that kind of sidekick creature character. So a lot of times those come first. But yeah, filling in the background critters, that's the stuff that takes time. And so sometimes word sprints are really useful for me that way because I know I need somebody there and I don't know who. And I need that subconscious kind of irrational thing to come out of me. And it doesn't come out of me when I'm sitting there like brainstorming. It comes out when I'm like, you have to write 500 words in the next 15 minutes, go. And I like set a timer. That's when all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, willow trees do kind of remind me of spiders, and then it's off to the races. So yeah, it is not as orderly as I think, one would hope that it would be.
Well, I think a bestiary is in your future. That sounds really cool, actually.
That would be really cool. I love it. And I guess we should probably pause. So there may be some people who are listening or will listen to the recording that have not yet checked out Twist. So Sarah, can you kind of give us your quick pitch for like what is Twist all about for people who may not have read it yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So Twist is about the intersections between 3 different kids in this one Tulsa neighborhood who all go to the same school. So you've got Neha right there, who's an artist, and she's had to move somewhat, for her parents' jobs. And so she's got this notebook where she's drawing her ideal town that she wishes that she lived in. Only critters have come and inhabited her notebook. And she likes them. They're nice, they're friendly, but something is hunting them. And it turns out that what's hunting them is the monsters from Eli's scary stories. He's bucking to be the next Stephen King, but he didn't realize that his monsters were visiting their wrath upon other people. And Court is basically extremely talented at getting into trouble and getting out of trouble as well, because that is part of getting into trouble is you eventually have to get out of it. And so she turns out to be the perfect ally as they are figuring out what to do about the monsters and the creatures who, of course, eventually escape from their notebooks and into their neighborhood. So,
as they do, right? Well, before I pass it on to Samantha, since we're talking about monsters, I wanted to read one of my favorite passages on page 158. And this is when Eli, the writer, is describing how he creates monsters. So he says, the trick wasn't describing the monster to death. Instead, it was a matter of choosing which details would have the most effect at any given moment. The flash of the overhead lights on its crumpled horns as it turned its head, the gleam of saliva dripping between its ivory teeth as it smiled at the scene before it. And the scariest part of all, the realization that the howler saw exactly what Eli saw, a restaurant, only this one served crepes instead of pizza and maybe a side dish of kids. But it's kind of cool that since he is a writer, you can make a really nice connection between the way that he's creating his stories and the way the readers might want to create their own stories in real life. And he's kind of giving like real-time writing advice.
It's funny because a couple of different authors have come up to me and said, I can't believe that you even wrote something that's this terrifying to a writer, right? The idea that you could create this monster and then it would come out of your book and then you would have to deal with it. Like, why would you do that to us? So that was definitely a fun part of this. But, like when I was writing that, I was really thinking about I don't know about any of you, but like as a kid, I was someone who had really vivid nightmares, and some of them were just goofy. I mean, they would be empirically funny if you weren't in a nightmare when you were having them, because they would be something like claymation. But it was impossible for me to watch claymation and not be like, yeah, that's fun and slightly creepy. And then it would all come out of my subconscious later, right? So when I'm making monsters, that's one of those things that's always kind of on my mind, is how the stuff that we're scared of doesn't always make a lot of sense, but there's some detail. There's something about like the cadence at which someone says something, or, you know, the way that someone moves at just not quite the right pace. And then like later that just comes leaping out at you when you're sleeping. So yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's I think a lot of people have that when they're a kid. I definitely did. And I used to have recurring nightmares, so I would have them over and over and over again, like the same ones. You're like, so weird.
Did you ever control your nightmares? Like, did you ever hit an age
Mhm.
where you were like, you could change what happened?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That was
still
a
do that. Like
breakthrough.
now, it's hard for me not to have that sort of conscious control over my nightmares. Like it's hard for me to have ones where or just dreams, you know. So I tend to control them most of the time.
And then
But
they still have rules, weirdly. Like, I don't know, like, and I'm
Mhm.
so sorry because I'm like jumping in and going off on a
Oh
tangent, but
no,
like,
yeah.
I would have these weird dreams about our house being invaded by spiders, but until I was driving age, we were not able to get into a car to get away, like me and my sister, because we could not
Oh.
drive. And it just kind of blows my mind when I look back on it, that my head was like, yeah, but in the middle of a spider invasion, like you don't want to get pulled over for not having a license, you know? And like, I don't think there's any middle grade book any of us would write today where a kid in that kind of danger wouldn't at least take a shot at getting behind the wheel and like fleeing.
Right.
So what was going on in my brain?
I guess that's weird. It just wasn't one of on your list of possibilities, I guess, because you hadn't experienced it in real life. That's interesting though.
You were
And
following
well,
the rules, I guess.
so yeah, it wasn't part of your rule set there. Well, Samantha, I will turn it over to you for your burning question that you want to ask Sarah.
Well, it was funny actually with Kim, with you reading that part. It was like the perfect segue into my question, because my question would be, reading this and especially that scene with Eli when he talks about, you know, writing the monster, it made me think so much of you as a spooky author. So do you kind of feel like Eli is the closest to you, or is there another character that was closest to you, to who you are?
I mean, probably as a kid, I was not artistic the way that Neha is, but like that thing of being this kind of quiet kid, but like she's also someone that gets outraged. Like when she thinks something is not fair, she is outraged by that. And so I really relate to her on that level. Eli is fun for me because his relationship with his little sister, Lisa, like when you have a sibling that's kind of close to you in age and you're not really responsible for them, but you kind of like quasi are, like that was, we had some of that going on when I was a kid, myself and my younger sister, like that thing where you're sneaking to go check on the danger and you're like, stay right here. And they follow you, right? And you're like, we're both gonna die. Like this is just, there's no getting out of this. You know, that was very familiar. And Court, honestly, that was pure wish fulfillment because there was a family down the street that was pretty much as bananas as hers. We all had stories about them. And like that was the house you wanted to go hang out at because you were going to get to do all the stuff that your parents would never let you do. So her parents are pretty responsible people overall, but you know, as you saw, there's a lot that goes on that they don't notice. So
I love it. Well, and with all of these characters too, you're kind of celebrating the different parts of creativity. Like they're all in this sort of gifted group together, and then they all have their different type of creativity that they pursue. So, where did that come from? Is that just in your life? Like you pursue different types of creativity, or wanting to pass it on to kids nowadays, or?
that was actually really important to me because I was in a gifted and talented program when I was in Tulsa, but it was very much based around kind of this right-brained creativity, which, you know, everybody in this little circle right here has. And then I moved to another state and they immediately shunted me into the gifted program, only there it was entirely STEM focused. And I was totally out of my depth because that was not my forte. And in the meantime, like my middle sister, who's brilliant, she's an oncology nurse and like she does all these cool things. Like, because we were coming from this right brain gifted program where she had already been tested and not tested in, they wouldn't retest her for the STEM program, which made zero sense, you know? So it just made me really think about the fact that like all of us bring many gifts and that depending on where we end up, sometimes those gifts are not celebrated the way that they should be. And so I feel like, you know, Neha and Eli would have fit squarely into the program that I grew up in. Court is one of those kids whose gifts would probably have been overlooked. And she's clearly like this really cool, intelligent, outside the box kid that any STEM teacher would be like, oh, let's go build cranes together and see if we can lift a school bus, you know, but like in that time and place, she maybe would have gone underappreciated. So, so yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember being in those programs. They were really fun. It's funny because I think one of my clearest memories is doing those like lateral thinking games, or you know, like you're like with this like the ice block and the ice block melted, and like how did the guy in the locked room, you know, murder himself? I don't know, like whatever it was. Like, it's just, yeah, but we would do lots of fun stuff like that. So lots of fond memories of those groups. But Janet, did you have another burning question for Sarah? I know you probably have 100, but just pick one.
I think I was really appreciative of how you were able to keep the parents on scene in so many scenes, and yet totally oblivious, totally out to lunch about what's going on around them, snakes dangling from ceilings and that kind of thing. And how did you manage as a writer to approach that kind of oblivion? Because when I played with something similar in The Charmed Children of Rookskill Castle, I actually ended up making my adults spelled so that they were enchanted. They couldn't participate in the magic because it you know, they were dopey, you know, almost literally dopey about what they were seeing. But in your case, it's like, you know, oh, let's get that thing off of me, whatever, you know, fly or whatever it is. So how did you manage that? You're right. Right. How did you manage that?
It's something I think a lot about, because I think when I first went to write Oddity and I was writing a contemporary fantasy, one of the first things that popped into my head was every kid I know has a cell phone, and that's a real distraction from going and having a middle grade adventure and not being interrupted by like chore reminders and like your parent using a GPS tracker to figure out where you are. You know, like I have a friend who's a single dad who's an engineer who just, he had all of his kids like geo-tracked at all times. And he was like, go be free. But like, there's a limit, you know, like he would have known where they were and what they were doing. So I'm always thinking about that. And also I have that kind of like bias against the traditional children's trope where parents have to be immediately like murdered off because it's the only way to explain, like one parent just can't track all the bananasness. And so, so I do really like having parents who are very present and obviously caring. But I mean, you know, I lived in my head as a kid. I was constantly having epic adventures at the dinner table that my parents had no idea were going on. And so like, so it makes sense to me kind of that story building where the parent is in the room, but there are just some things they can't see, to me just tracks with the way imaginations work and adventures work. And a lot of the things, the subtext that's important to kids, you know, if you've ever been at the table with your sibling and you're having this like huge fight across the table and your parents don't realize that there's actually a lengthy argument going on because your mouths aren't open, like there's always that stuff going on, and parents never understand why that stuff is important, which is why they tell you to go do XYZ thing and ignore it. And you're like, oh no, ignoring is not physically possible. I'm sorry, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so all of that was important to me to get in there, but I also wanted parents to be, by and large, likable human beings who didn't mean for their children to be at risk of loss of, you know, life and limb. But
so I have a follow-up to that, and that's about Dwight. He's the only adult-ish who is kind of aware, right? Where did he come from?
I feel like his Arrested Development gives him like a little bit of a pass, you know? And he's based on a bus driver that I did have when I was a kid who did totally get pulled over, who did do things like drive while peeling an orange. Like all of that stuff happened all the time. And I mean, it was, for us, it was epic because it made us notorious because we were on the bus that got pulled over, you know? But it was really, looking back, I was like, oh man, like what was the standard for who got to drive? like it's really not far off from don't let the pigeon drive the bus. Like no one should have been going to drive the bus. But so I really love the idea that he's got this level of credulity to him where like if Eli writes a big terrible monster, he's like, oh dude, really, where, there, you know, and his dad just panic. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I love all that. And you're just, so in my first book, I did something similar where only children could see sort of the creature. In that case, it was the skeleton that's like growing in the main character's backyard, except one adult, or, you know, maybe a couple adults could see it for various reasons. But I think that's a fun thing to play with. So it's interesting to see parallels.
It is, except your books make me cry. It's a good cry.
Yeah, they're very different types of books, but that one thing is like a similarity for sure. So I love that. But Samantha, what do you have a follow-up question or something else that you really wanted to ask?
Well, I really love beasts, as you know, The Boy, the Boat, and the Beast. So I really love beasts. And actually, I just put the Howler in my latest spookymiddlegrade.com blog post because it's such a great beast for a spooky middle grade book. And I was curious how you came up with that, you know, the big bad in your book. Like, you know, did you have different influences that that developed that beast?
So I did kind of poke around Midwestern legends a little bit because, you know, there's like a lot of talk among kids that grew up in that part of the country that was like, oh, you know, there's a rattlesnake over there, be careful. Or did you know that there's like bears in the creeks back there? And you're like, you know, now I know there were no bears, but like we all really sincerely believed that they were. And so there is a monster called the Ozark Howler that the beast is like loosely, that Howler's loosely based on. But I felt like Eli, you know, when you first go into and you start like writing monsters, right? You're going to be like, bigger is always better, right? And like big and like dangerous is the most important thing. And that his thinking on that would have to like evolve as the book went on, right? And it was one of those things that I really liked about Court's sister always playing D&D at the table, is that someone was able to actually offer him a different perspective on evil, that evil doesn't have to be the biggest, loudest thing. And that, you know, you can actually be like evil, but with standards, right? And you're like, oh, good, I can negotiate with that kind of evil. So it was a lot of fun to start with this thing that was just big and crude and then be like, okay, now I could write a better villain. I'm pretty sure I could. So yeah.
I love it. And so were any of your creatures based on like actual nightmares you had as a kid or things that you dreamed up as a kid?
Probably more of the creeps were than the monsters were. Although I will say like the ones that have like the garbage disposal mouths, man, ever since I was small, I've had just an irrational fear of garbage disposals. Like if you know, like what I picture down there is just like 8 million knives, right? And we all know, like as adults, that is not the reality of the garbage disposal. But as a child, you're just like, I can't go near it. It will turn on without warning. It won't matter if anyone's near the switch. So that was definitely a motivating factor there. But yeah, some of the like Sleek It, I love otters and I always have and so like there had to be some kind of giant otter-like creature in there that was just joy-inducing. And the snakes, like the idea of snakes with butterfly wings, like I've always been fascinated by both snakes and butterflies. And like one of my proudest moments as a mom was getting to a point where as a kid who had been for like not supposed to touch anything, right? Like raised by a suburban mom, like, no, we don't go out in the wild. We don't camp, to like learn to pick up snakes for my own children and teach them how to pick up snakes safely and be like, look, it was like Mongols. So of course there had to be snakes in this book.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think snakes are amazing because they eat mice. And mice freak me out. Like, so I'm like, I once lived in this house that was a rental house and it was like infested with mice. And I had someone come and look in the attic and they were like, your attic's full of snakes, just so you know, because they were eating the mice. And I was like, please, I need more snakes. Where can I find more snakes so they can eat all the mice? So yeah, I feel ya. I feel ya on the snakes. But I think there's so much in here that could get kids excited about writing. So if we had maybe a listener out there who is interested in writing, but they think their ideas are like a little too weird or something, what would your advice be for that person?
Oh man, I mean, I was definitely like a weird kid, you know? I always had a book in front of my face. I moved around constantly, so even if I had fit in with the zeitgeist at the previous school, I wasn't going to at the next one. Um, and I tried to write when I first started writing, like I think a little bit more the expected story. And that wasn't what agents were interested in seeing from me, you know? And it was really only when I did let my full imagination out to play on the page that people went, oh, yeah, okay, I want that. So being weird definitely ultimately turned out to be, you know, my secret superpower. It just took me a little while to actually believe that and unleash it. So, yeah, bring the weird because nobody wants to see what we've seen 5,000 times before. Like, it's boring. Anybody can write what's been seen 5,000 times before. Like, go off the beaten track for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Well, as we kind of wrap up, Janet, do you have a final burning question? I mean, I don't know if you can narrow it down, but do you have a final one?
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by everyone's process, how you manage to write, how you control everything that you're working. And you said something about sitting down to write 500 words, bam, like that. So is that how you actually approach writing a book? Do you plan at all, or is it totally organic?
I am a planner to an extent, but I mean, you know, like we all have that moment where an idea like lights us up, like someone lit a
Yeah.
candle and we're like, oh, that could work. Right. And so there's usually just like a moment of catharsis where I sit down and go, what would that look like? And then I stop somewhere in there. Like when I get that first gush of words out, that's when I'll stop and I'll start saying, okay, so realistically, like who would the other characters be? And do I really know who my antagonist is? And like, what kind of things do I think would happen and in what order? But I try to hold it loosely because when I first started writing, I would get so clenched up about editing because it had taken so much work just to finish. So I'm more of like a lister. I'm not like a full-on outliner. And I find that like really detailed outlining steals some of the joy of the process for me because it makes me feel like now I'm committed, right? Um and I, like I said, my most creative moments often come out when I am doing a word sprint. Like there's an app called Write or Die that I still use and just love because it will do things if you stop typing, like start erasing your words or rickroll you. And I tell people that and they go, but like, I need that because like some of you know, like I homeschool my kids. I'm graduating my second of 3 this spring. And then I also work a 3/4 time job outside the home that's often more than 3/4 time. So that timer, like there are nights when I'm tired and the creativity's there, but I would not access it without that cattle prod, you know? Um, so it's really important. And during COVID, being home more has taken away that like I need jumper cables to get started feeling a little bit. But I also just we're in front of screens. Like if you work outside the home, now all your meetings are on screens. And that's been really difficult. And so I have like a stack of those Moleskine journals and I bribe myself with stickers. Like when I finish one, I can paper a new one with stickers and keep going. And a lot of times I'll choose stickers that like are kind of themed to match whatever I'm writing about. And then that's really fun. So that's where some of my visuals come from too, is not from Pinterest boards, but from like people's Redbubble art because it's like on my little inspiration notebook. So that's been really, really helpful.
I love that, like, even now we can be like, yeah, it's stickers.
Stickers.
That's mostly the thing.
I
That's
can't
the
believe I didn't put stickers
I
in this
love it.
book because I had a full-on sticker collection, like album, and like our big treat at the mall was to go to the Sanyo store and buy like all the Hello
Oh,
Kitty
yeah.
stickers and we would have those scratch and sniff ones. Samantha, do you remember these? That like even if they smelled like gasoline or whatever, you'd be like, ew, but it does really smell like gasoline. So
Yeah.
I was
next
going to say
time.
stickers are so 80s. I was surprised you didn't have those in, you know? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
or
had one
roller
of those
skates.
albums too with stickers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the stickers.
But I did get Showbiz Pizza Place in there.
Yes, you did. I love it. And I also love when you're talking about outlining because it's different for every person. Sometimes it helps, but I tend to see it the way you see it. Like, I will it will be helpful to an extent if it's broad enough. But if I try to get granular, it will start to feel like I'm setting limitations for myself. And that part of my brain that is more of a free writer is always more creative than the part of my brain that does a outline. So yeah, I'm with you on that one. But Samantha, bring us home. I mean, this has to be like a hard one, I think. So this is probably real tough question.
It's kind of an easy one, but actually it was following on because I'm like Janet, I was going to ask about process too, because I love hearing different people's process. And I've been talking a lot about this with friends recently, and especially with one of my clients about like outlining and not outlining and stuff. And we've been going through that a lot. And it's really interesting to me. And now a friend of mine, she drafts her entire first draft on a notepad in pencil, freehand. And then she puts it into the computer and then, edits it. She goes, it's another middle grade author. And so I was wondering, because you were talking about having that notebook and the stickers, do you ever do that? I will sometimes do that, especially if I get stuck, I'll start working on a notebook, but generally I'm a computer person. What do you do?
I use Scrivener a lot. But like I said, during COVID, I've been using those notebooks almost exclusively. Now, the only thing I really need that I don't have, Samantha, is I need some kind of a stand that perfectly holds a Moleskine notebook at the level of my eyes when I then go have to transcribe like 10 or 15,000 words into Scrivener, because that's killing me. Like I haven't found the right angle yet where I can actually, and I make more typos when I'm trying to type from something I've written than when I'm just typing. And that makes me, because I'm one of those people that's aware it's happening as it's happening. And then I have to stop everything and go fix it, or, like I'll die. So
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find
really
it more
annoying.
freeing, like doing it freehand, or is it easier doing it, when you're drafting or revising?
When I'm revising, yeah, for sure. Unless I'm completely scrapping a scene, that stuff's all on the computer. If I'm completely scrapping a scene and I'm struggling with that, then yeah, notebook 100%, because it just doesn't allow me to finick around with whatever it is that I know isn't working. But yeah, and I kind of know after a while, like I used to use 8.5 by 11 notebooks that I knew each page in my handwriting was like 250 words. So that was nice because I kind of came up through NaNoWriMo, and like word count was very important every day. And then my writers group in Lafayette always had some different kind of little workaround that we were doing. Like we used the magic spreadsheet. Have you guys seen that? It's like Kim's seen it. You have to write like a certain number of words every day, and you're competing with all the people in your group. And if you skip a day, your total score drops to 0. But you have like cumulative points that you start to get for like how long your streak is. You start to build up additional points for having a streak. We've done that. There's like a role play website called Habit RPG that we used at one point. Like we've got all these different little accountability toys that we were playing with. So yeah, I'm motivated by incentives, I guess.
Wow. It's the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire version of writing processes,
Or at least who doesn't want to be shamed over a beer on Friday night after writers group.
Exactly,
So
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's awesome. Anything that gets those words in, right?
Very much so.
Absolutely. And I see we have someone who's joined us in the chat. So we're actually kind of wrapping up. But if anyone has a question that they want to ask us live or ask Sarah Cannon live about twists and get that one in. But I did have another question that I wanted to ask since this one has so many amazing creatures in it. And there's kind of Sleekit, who's like the main creature. And so it's kind of like her like go-to creature, right? So for each of us, who would be like, if you had your creature that was like your spirit animal or something, how would you describe that creature? I know it's like it's a hard one to kind of think of off the cuff, but I'm thinking mine would definitely have bat wings. It would have big like buggy sunglasses. And what else? And I think it would have like probably fuzzy, like it'd just be like this big fuzzy purple ball with bat wings, giant eyeballs, and buggy sunglasses and a beret. That would be my spirit monster. So y'all be thinking about yours because I'm gonna get Annie's question in real quick to give you a minute to think about it. And we were kind of talking about this actually, but she asked, how many words do you write a day? And is it something you're doing like every day, or do you have kind of like you're working on a project and then you have a break?
It definitely for years was something I was doing every day. And of course, like during Nano, I'd be doing 1667 every single day. And then when I wasn't doing Nano, it'd be anywhere from 5 to 1500 words, just depending how it was going. I am finding more recently, and some of it is just that life isn't functioning in a linear pattern, right? So like, I have like these spikes and drops based on what's going on elsewhere in my life. So there will be days when I don't write at all. There will be days when I write, 5,000 words. But I try to average at least 5 to 800 words a day when I know that I'm sitting down to write. I think that's what I need to feel like I'm moving ahead on a project in a way where it's going to eventually get done.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so, and I think we could even open this one up to see what Samantha and what Janet do, but if you have your monster ready, you can tell me about your monster and then tell me about your daily word count.
Okay, so well, my monster would be a shapeshifter and primarily dog, big enough that when I'm walking, I could just have my hand down and it would be on the dog's back. So like a big wolf, but it could get small enough, like it could shape into a really, really tiny rabbit that can fit into my pocket. And it can also grow wings like an owl and become an owl. That would be my
wow. This creature does it all. I love
want this creature now. I really, really want this creature. And for really my cool. Thank you. I really want this now. Now I have to write this creature somehow. But yeah, so for writing, I do write every day. Lately, I've been working more on client stuff because I was hit up with a bunch of deadlines at the same time. So I've been really missing it. And tomorrow I'm back onto my stuff. But I kind of separated out. So the mornings are mine, and the afternoons generally are either client work or marketing or other things. And if I can write on both morning and afternoon, I try to, and I'll get as much as I can done. When things are really flowing, I can usually do like 2,000 words in a sitting. But when things are not really flowing, I'll be happy if I can just get a couple sentences, a paragraph, just some ideas down. Sometimes like I like, like Sarah, you mentioned lists. I really like that too. And sometimes if I'm stuck, I'll just like brainstorm what's around them, what do they want? What do they write in this moment, in this scene, and just see, just like make as many lists as I can until everything kind of goes again. But yeah, I try to write every day. Sometimes I'll break on the weekends, but sometimes I won't. And sometimes I'll write in the middle of the night, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, it happens. I will say I'm very similar. I try to do it every day, but again, you always have days when it just doesn't happen. And I recently switched from word count to time, and I'm really enjoying time more. So what I'm doing now is my goal is to do 5 25-minute sessions throughout the day. Um, and I'm finding that my old word goal per day was 2,000 words. But when I'm doing these 5 sessions, I'm getting a lot more than that, but I'm not even like counting
Yeah,
it.
that's funny.
So I can
That's
often, you know,
awesome.
in 3, I'll be doing like I've done 2,500. I'm like, okay, well, I still have 2 more. So, but yeah, it's like, can I get that done? And like you said, trying to do half the day with writing and half the day with promo. Since this is a full-time job, I'm trying to do more promotional stuff. And what I found is it's so easy for me to get distracted and just pour all my time into the promotional stuff because it's less of an emotional investment that I have to be really
Yeah.
careful with that. So I'm thinking about now maybe doing promotional on the weekends and writing during the week. That might be a better mix for me so I don't get
Yeah.
distracted during the week. But we'll see. It's always a work in progress. But Janet, yes, if you could come up with your spirit monster similar to the monsters in Twist, what would your spirit monster be?
I have an absolute fascination for dragons. I always have. I just think that they're the neatest of the mythic animals, and they can fly. They can fry you. But my dragon would be small. Would be actually tiny. Like I could have it on my desk, and it would also be extremely colorful, and of course it would talk, and
yeah.
and that would be my companion mythic animal. And if I could live through the eyes of that dragon and fly, and that would be my wish. So yeah,
That
that's my
sounds
mythic creature.
awesome. I love dragons.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And as for process, right, I had just come off of a break because I wrote a first draft and knew that it needed a lot of work, but I also needed to put it aside. So I've been working on, I like Samantha, I do book coaching, so I've been dealing with client work and marketing, which I absolutely hate, but has to be done. So I've been doing a lot of that stuff, but I'm just now getting back into the book, and I find that I'm really, really excited about it. That's a great feeling because, when you leave something that you're not quite sure about and you think, oh my God, is this going to work? And then you get back to it and you say, yeah, this is going to work. And I don't do either word counts or page counts or anything counts. I go strictly by emotional arc, like a big holistic thing. So if I get really into something, I can write a lot of words in a really short time, or I can do nothing for a while. But for me, it's really about getting into the character's head and then just living there. And I always try to stop writing for the day when I know exactly what I'm going to be doing next, so that the momentum's there to continue the next day. So.
Oh yeah, same. I do that too. That's always super helpful.
It's helpful.
And Annie had a question for Sarah. Speaking of monsters, is there ever one you would not use for some reason? Maybe it's too scary.
Yeah, I think so. But I think that for me, like, you don't see me do a lot of very humanoid monsters. And I think that's why. I think because, most people's actual trauma comes at the hands of actual human beings. And so to me, a monster that might actually be reminiscent of a real human being who had done harm would be kind of over the line for me. As a kid, I took refuge in fantasy, and I was surprised as an adult when spooky was what I liked writing. But it still has to be pretty thoroughly divorced from reality for me to be an okay monster, I guess I would say. And like, I write spiders in my books all the time, but half the time there's somebody there who approves of the spiders, respects or admires the spiders. And so, like, the gardener in me can't let the spiders be full-on villains to the point that no one can appreciate that spiders have their own point of view, right? Like, spiders got a spider. So yeah, there are definitely like little rationales around the monster building. But yeah, that would probably be my line, is just, there are enough human monsters as it is. So,
Oh,
sorry, that's not a
yeah.
super fun answer, but it's true.
Yeah, no, the humans are always scarier. Absolutely. And of course, we have to say hi to Miss Nikki, who has joined
Miss
us
Nikki.
after another meeting. So thanks for popping in. And Andy had one final question. How or where do you research your monsters? And we kind of mentioned earlier that you need your own bestiary or whatever. You need your own compendium of monsters. And so where did these come from?
I mean, a lot of times I'm just researching in my own head. Like, what have I seen in there in the past that's, what stands out for me from my childhood? What's a creature I saw, a place that I was that had a really strong presence for me, and what do I think would live there? And other times, like if I'm really stuck, I'll go on Pinterest and I'll just start searching really weird stuff, or I'll start searching about the region that I'm writing about, like wherever the story is set, looking for some kind of plant, looking for some kind of creature that I didn't realize was there that sparks something. So that's mostly where that kind of stuff comes from. Miss Nikki has a question.
I know. I do see that Miss Nikki has a question, and I'm wondering if it is her famous question that she loves to ask at the end of every one of our live events. It might be. So we will see what Miss Nikki's question is.
I can tell you my monster Patronus if you want to know, because I'm the only one that hasn't done it yet.
Oh, yeah, you haven't done it yet. Well, I guess I was like, I'm just assuming that Sleekit is your monster Patronus, but maybe you have another one.
She's definitely Neha's monster Patronus, but I had a lot of fun making her. But yeah, for me, it would be something enormous and cat-like, but also I would want it to be something that could glide, that had kind of like those beautiful folds of fur that are almost like robes that it can spread out and just like soar from one tree to another and like be really powerful, but also like light on its feet. And also I feel like it's really important that, like, if you ever saw the movie The Dark Crystal, the little creature Fizzgig, that when it's just had it is like, Rah! And it's like its whole mouth opens and it's as big as its head. Vitally important that this creature can do that, because that often matches my mood, and I just need somebody to make that noise for me, just to fully express my feelings in that moment when I'm hangry or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. Well, yes, I have predicted our final question correctly in all caps. What is your favorite reality show? And this has become kind of a running joke because Miss Nikki likes to ask that as the final question, even though it is unrelated, because it is unrelated to what we're talking about, which is
I
awesome.
totally want to give some really sarcastic answer and be like, Miss Nikki is my favorite reality TV show, but like, I'm not going to do that. I like reality TV shows that give me a window into a job that I will never have, but can respect, right? So, and I guess it also kind of depends on what I'm doing, Miss Nikki, because like, as an example, probably the reality TV show I watch the most is Top Chef. But if I'm painting a room, I'll watch Hell's Kitchen. It's just the rest of the time, I cannot respect a bunch of line cooks who smoke and can't handle a taste test that includes like green peas, right? Like they can't tell what a green pea is. I can't handle it. So it has to be Top Chef the rest of the time, because I can't suspend my disbelief with Hell's Kitchen. But if I'm painting a room, Hell's Kitchen's great.
I love that. Okay, excellent answer. And we actually have a final question that is for everyone. So this question is excellent. What's the best thing you've done to market your book, especially in times of COVID? That's an amazing question. And man, I will tell you, I've been actually listening to tons of book marketing podcasts, and it so much depends on your audience. And I would say for me, always the best thing has just been connecting with teachers and doing the virtual visits. And so you're getting in touch with readers from all across the country. And hopefully you're generating some word of mouth marketing through those visits. Like sometimes you can get kids really excited I know like one recently I was able to do like their district book club. So it's the most avid readers from all over their district that come together in a book club. They're so excited about books and they're presenting about their books. And so to go there and get to do that presentation directly to readers. So for me, that's the best. It's one of the only ways like going into the virtual school visits that we're able to connect directly to readers, because generally we're selling to the gatekeepers, but so anything that where you can talk directly to readers, or where you're making connections to teachers and librarians and the people that are purchasing the books for me. But let's see who wants to. How about Sarah? Since you're in the hot seat, what would you say?
Yeah, it's getting dark in here too, so I better answer fast. But yeah, no, I would say that I struggle to strike a balance between marketing and writing, honestly, for reasons that I've already mentioned. Like my life outside of writing is very full and very busy right now, and I often feel like I don't do enough marketing, and it kind of stresses me out. School visits are definitely my favorite way to market because it's so engaging and affirming for me as an author to be around readers. I come from a teaching background. And so getting to go back into classroom spaces to talk about writing and to share books is, pretty much one of my favorite things to do. And I also just try to make sure, and again, I don't know how effective this is in terms of marketing, but I also just try to make sure that like programs that need books have them, that, I pay attention and make myself available and make sure that, if kids are dealing with like a lack of books, or if someone is offering books as comfort or support, I just hope that one of those books is mine and try to make sure I get them out there. So
Yeah, I love that. Janet, what would you say? Yeah, I see Miss Nikki. She's like, did I miss the answer? Miss Nikki, you're gonna have to rewind if you want to get the answer about that reality show, because she had a great answer for that one.
Oh, thank you.
So, Janet?
So this is no joke, but my favorite or the best marketing tool that has happened for me is the spooky middle grade. I'm not kidding. It's you guys are awesome, Kim, and thank you, Samantha, for inviting me to begin with. And no, I'm not kidding, because you have so much energy and you put together these wonderful platforms that we can all participate in. And I have noticed that it makes a difference, because we are able to reach out to an audience of teachers and librarians and kids in schools. So it's definitely been a winner for me. Thank you.
Really awesome. And Samantha, what would you say?
I agree. I mean, being part of this group has been amazing, and I love when we do the free Q&As in classrooms, and it's there's no pressure on us, on me individually. I can be writing or be working on something and then pop on and do this, because I don't really have to have the whole presentation prepared. And I'm sharing that space with 3 or 4 other authors who I love and are amazing. So it's wonderful to have that chat. It's so much fun. It's always a highlight of my day. And then meeting with the kids that we're talking with in the classroom, and that's been going on during COVID too, which has been wonderful. So that's been a really fantastic marketing tool to just reach out, because they're not directly coming asking for me particularly. They might not know about my book, but I'm still able to get out. And then it's funny, Annie, that Annie asked this, actually, because I've got Arrows coming out on June 22nd, and we're still in lockdown, still in COVID, and I've been thinking about what to do and how to keep marketing it. And I've been doing giveaways and stuff, and I will be speaking. Oh, my husband! You might hear big explosions. My husband's watching Breaking Bad for like the 4th time. So, I mean, I am speaking at doing some author chats at TLA with my publisher, which I'm excited about. which goes straight, that TLA is for the Texas Library Association. That's next month. And so that's really exciting. But it is hard to keep putting it out there. But I think one of the things that I always keep reminding myself, and I've been told by other authors, is front list promotes backlist. So even when I'm trying to make sure that I carve out time in my day for marketing, in my week for marketing, if I can't do that, if I've got too many deadlines going on, be it with my own book or client work or anything else, and I can't, do that every day, I keep reminding myself that I'm ultimately, first and foremost, a writer, and I'm not going to have more books coming out unless I keep writing. So I need to keep doing that. That's my most important job. That's my first job. And the more books I hopefully have coming out, the more they will, more readers will find my older books as well. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes, I love that for sure. And since we've brought it up, we should also say for any educators that are listening or that will be tuning in, the Spooky Middle Grade group, spookymiddlegrade.com, we do offer free author Q&As throughout the year. So you'll get to have a panel of 4 authors and students can ask all their burning questions, and it's so much fun. Your students, I can predict, will get very excited about writing and reading, and we'll just all have an amazing time. So that is really fun. And my last funny thing, because I got really excited about it like a week ago when I got on there, in terms of marketing, is I'm now on TikTok, y'all. So find me on TikTok at Kim Ventrella. I have no idea if it will, because most of the people on there are not doing middle grade. I will say, like, there's a huge book talk community. It's all for YA and adult. But you know what? Just starting a trend. So if you're loving those middle grade book talks, get over there and find me on TikTok. But thank everyone so much for all of your questions and for tuning in. It has been super fun, and a special thank you to Sarah Cannon, author
Thank you,
of
Sarah.
Twist.
Thanks for having me, everybody.
And check
you.
back next week, or check back soon, because I'll be announcing the title for next month's book club, which will be happening the end of April. So I'll be announcing that title in the next couple of days. So make sure that you check back for that one. And thanks to everyone who has joined us. As usual, I will, yes, definitely, Annie, when you learn how to locate me, just look me up, Kim Ventrella, on the TikTok. Everyone out there, you can see me dressed as a granny. Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I'm dressed as a granny. It's true.
To go look.
Not in every single one, just one time. That's a one-time only granny. So we will be signing off, and I always have to wave goodbye. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.